Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another night on the BMW Race Driver SimRacing Series, and we are at Zandvoort. This is the old Zandvoort. It's not featuring the updates that have been brought about for the return of Formula One, which, well, didn't happen, but it means that there's no massive banking for drivers to contend with today. Just a tight, twisty circuit where overtaking is going to be difficult. Qualifying going to be crucial around this fantastic Dutch facility. You'll see all the action right here, live on the Global SimRacing Channel. My name is Brian Jones, and alongside me in the booth is Oshin Pahaka, and behind the scenes is our director Joe Peak, using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Let's have a look at our track guide and see how to get around this place.
Welcome to Zandvoort. This track just to the west of Amsterdam fell into obscurity, but is getting new life in recent times thanks to a resurgence of Formula One fans in the country. Back in the mid-20th century, it hosted the Formula One Dutch Grand Prix for nearly 30 years. Granted, it was on a much faster and more flowing layout. Nowadays, the 5 different versions which are available to be run are mostly tight and technical. The shortest one is a little under a mile, while even the longest only stretches to a little over 2.5 miles. These tiny lengths, plus the narrowness of the track and its lack of long straights, make passing almost maddeningly difficult. The 2 most common spots are Tarzan, which is the first corner, and Hans Ernst, which is the final chicane. Even though it has recently been updated in the real world with more banking, even on the old track here on iRacing, it has an unusual amount of camber for a road course. The 2 aforementioned turns, along with Hugenholtz and Schieflock, allow drivers to carry more speed than you'd expect. It also gives drivers a chance to take slightly unusual lines. Like most old-school tracks, runoff is minimal. Mistakes in a few of the faster turns tend to allow no time for recovery and a big repair bill. Another unique quality is the fact that Zandvoort is literally next to the beach on the North Sea. Therefore, the sand easily blows its way onto the track surface and lessens grip. It's a tricky place to race, and even trickier circuit to win at. But with the beautiful surroundings, great history, and a mob of enthusiastic fans donning orange, you can't help but want to go visit this fantastic venue.
A look there at this place, and, well, Ozzy, what more can you tell us? Because I'm not going to be attempting any of these quarter names today. Are you going to try it?
Yeah, I mean, sure. First you go up from Tartsenbocht, then you go to Gerlachbocht and all the way to Arjelujendubocht, which bocht just means corner in Dutch language, which is a beautiful and lovely language. That doesn't sound like a throat infection at all. So anyway, Circuit Zandvoort. It's known as the Zandvoort, and they've been racing here since 1948. And it did catch my ear when you called the old one the old circuit, because the original circuit was, of course, a staple in the Formula One calendar as well. The new one, however, it's a little bit different, bit tighter and twister, as you said, but should still provide good racing. Look out for passes into the banked turn number 1, as well as drivers navigating the ultra-fast turn number 8.
Yeah, turn 1, good, a little bit of banking on it. Nothing like the modern-day final corner at this place, which we'll see, hopefully, at some point in the iRacing service. Thank you, as always, go to the people that make this possible, Express Hydraulics, who import and stock a wide range of hydraulic accessories so you can get what you want, when you want it, and Griffin Excavations provides you with a professional and experienced digger operator ready to help you with general earthworks, landscaping, drilling, trenching, driveways, and site clearing. And you can get your company involved with the Global SimRacing Channel as well. With over 1 million impressions each month, it is a great opportunity to get your brand seen by, well, a pretty big audience, to say the least. Head to the link in the description to find out more about that. Well, let's take a look at how our championship looks after 2 rounds being run. Until Rafael Sabo and Taylor Cochran have been the 2 to beat. 4 points separate them at the top. James Anderson running in 3rd. Matthew Griffin, Stefan McCartan pretty close together in 4th and 5th. Expecting that battle to resume between Sabo and Cochran today. And our race details, what have they got ahead of us, Ozzy?
Well, it's round 3 out of 10. We're racing the BMW M8 GDE, the big old mate, as people like to call it. And it is a pretty big car, a pretty powerful car, especially for this circuit. We got an open qualifying that's currently going on. And then, interestingly, 2 25-minute heat races with a reverse grid on the second one. So that should be very, very interesting. We've seen it a couple of times already this season, and here at Zandvoort, it should make for a fine spectacle, Ryan.
Yeah, going to be the hardest one so far. We started off over at Road Atlanta, then we went to Phillip Island. Both those places, you can get overtakes done relatively easily. And we saw Sabo climb from the last spot on the grid all the way back up to the front and fall just short in both occasions. Might find it a little bit more difficult today. Taylor Cockerdin has pretty much had both races play out exactly the same. Not quite race-winning pace in the first one. He had that big mishap as well in race 1 at Road Atlanta where he barrel-rolled down the straight. Restarted that one from first in race 2. Ran away for the win, and then in race 2 at Phillip Island, he started 18th, 6 spots ahead of Sabo, got out front, and held him off to win that race as well. So those two have showed the wins between them. And we're looking to do the same today, looking at qualifying. Well, look out rest of the field, because Sabo quarter of a second quicker, and Taylor Cockerdin is second for Blomqvist. Best of the rest at the moment, only about half a tenth away in third from Cockerdin, and here is Sabo.
Yeah, he's driving pretty well so far, looking like a winner certainly. So this man's got a pretty big history with this series as well, and he's proving that out there today. Sabo, of course, is the front runner for season number 2 and multiple race winner in season number 1. He's a 4-time Formula 1 Sim League champion and races in the 2K Cup iRacing series as well. So, you know, he's had the history, and in a series like this, often when you see a certain group of people who know each other from hobby groups or local groups, you often get a couple of guys who have more sim racing past, who are the front runners, who are the favorites, so to speak, and he's certainly among them in this series.
Yeah, I don't think that's the way to go out of the final caller from Jeffrey Harley. He'll try that one again. And Paul Blomqvist will hope for a much smoother run through it. This is tripping me out a lot because I've been pounding laps around 2020 spec Zandvoort in a certain other game that exists featuring very fast race cars. And, well, that last complex is completely different as Blomqvist goes fractionally slower than his current fastest. And I'll just correct myself. Race 2 at Phillip Island, Simon came 4th, not 2nd, like in race 2 at Road Atlanta, so that's why he's only 4 points ahead of Cockerdin after he's recorded, I think, last and 9th in the first races at both rounds. As he comes through for another lap, and that'll keep him 2 tenths away. We've seen interesting, what's the word? I guess seesawing of times in these sessions, Aussie. In round 1, we had an incredible run when no one was able to put down a lap time. And in round 2, it wasn't quite as bad, but it was quite similar, where people were struggling to improve late on.
Yeah, and that's what often happens with such long qualifying sessions. You have 30 minutes of time, and you have an open qualifying, and people think, okay, I got all the time in the world, I can take the risks, I can, you know, push the limits a little bit harder, because all I have to do to complete is one lap. And that's true, you have half an hour to put one good lap in. But people start to find around 15-20 minutes in when you have 0 laps put in. And there's a couple of guys who have lap times put in. And then you're like, okay, once I nail this lap, I'm going to be so good. And then in the end, you're going to have to take a little bit off. And a little bit off once again. And then you find yourself just not screwing up completely, but having a disappointing qualifying as a result. And I think that's what often happens here. But this time, we have at least lap times on the board for everybody. So that's a good start with 6 minutes to go.
Plus being a 30-minute session, by the time we hop in and show the last 15 or 10 minutes of it, a lot of drivers have already had quite a lot of time to put their times down, and often, if you're in the groove of it after a 1-hour practice session that precedes this, you get that fast time down early, and then you're chasing milliseconds, and they are incredibly hard to find as Cockerdin again can't improve. Here's Zane Hills. He's currently sat in 4th position as he comes through the last corner on the racetrack. This one is flat out. Maybe a slight confidence lift. And then on to the main straight. 34.354, his quickest so far. He crosses the line, and that lap doesn't count, so he'll have to try again. Looks like off-tracks are going to be pretty easy to pick up today. It's very much an old-school racetrack with grass on either side, no asphalt runoff, gravel traps aplenty. Running off is going to be pretty easy to do. Once you do, it's going to also be very easy to drag yourself out towards the fence.
Yeah, that's one of the issues they have had with the renovation of the track.
Ooh, Rahali.
Oh, yeah, he goes second. Wow, that's a good
Good
lap.
lap.
Yeah, that's one of the issues they had with the 2020 renovation of the track because, well, people were like, okay, Zandvoort in its what the spec has on iRacing, the iRacing spec, and in the 2019 spec, it was never going to be suitable for Formula 1 cars because it's just too tight and twisty. So, and then they looked at and they were wondering, how do we change the circuit for Formula 1 and where do we go from here? Like all the walls are already in place, so they decided to just pretty much bank the last corner, improve some of the facilities and say, okay, come here. And well, the main thing for the people, of course, is that because Max Verstappen is now such a huge thing in Formula 1, they're gonna have a home race for the Dutch fans, which is great. It's not like they already have tracks like Spa and tracks in Spa, which is in Belgium and in Germany and all those other places to go in Central Europe. That's beside the point. But where was our race when Mika Häkkinen was winning world championships? Or Kimi? I'm not sold.
Yeah. It's essentially the Max Verstappen Grand Prix, isn't it? Brought back because of him. I'm not complaining. Going to be cool to see them back on this track. I mean, I've never seen him on this track to begin with. I'm not old enough. But, you know, I think it would be a good spectacle. Passing might be difficult, but who knows? Maybe these guys will show us that passing can be done around this place, albeit slightly different, as we've mentioned. You saw Gene Rollinson had a 0.2 of a second improvement just a few moments ago while we were pondering the new renovations. And here's Royce Rollinson. What can he do? Can he improve as well? No, he can. In fact, that's a minute and a half off the pace. I reckon that was probably an outlap based off that. And he goes a bit wide down at turn 1 for his next one. Here's Gene again. The drivers finding some improvements late on. We saw Rahali found 0.4 of a second pretty much to go from 5th to 2nd, just ahead of Cockeriv, and Rollinson found that 0.2. Can he follow it up with an X-up with another improvement? No, he can't. That's a couple seconds, no, a couple tenths off. Not far away, though. Who else have we got? Still 0.2 of a second, though, for Sabo over everyone else. Definitely the fastest driver outright, but that reverse grid format is keeping the rest of the field in it.
It certainly is, and I'm looking at Paul Blomqvist right now, who is sitting in 4th place. He has Rahali and Cockerton right ahead of him, so he's just outside the top 3 right now, but he is on a lap. He's very much on a lap, and he was sitting in 3rd or even 2nd place for a long time in this qualifying, so it's going to be interesting to see if he can find that 1/10, which would bring him back up to 2nd place. Let's see if it comes here. No, that's not a lap, but the next one will be a good one. And Paul Blomqvist, of course, that's a name some of you might recognize. As a matter of fact, the son of 1984 World Rally champion Stig Blomqvist.
Yep. Very talented family. Highlighted that last round as well. Not surprised to see him doing well today. You'll watch Sabo complete another lap here. It won't be representative. I want to highlight something else. We know Gene Rollinson won Season 1. We've seen Royce Rollinson in the first 2 rounds as well. Well, it stacks on because Kieran Rollinson has joined the party today as well. So we've got 3 of them in the field. The odds are on for one of them to get a top 5. Maybe a race win, but at the moment, they're sat 8th, 10th, 11th, and 17th.
Well, it's going to be improvement.
Yeah. One of them will do well.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Let's just hope that there's no black flags out them for those guys today. Henry
Casey
Rollins.
Stark. 34.968. 4/10 off his previous best. He won't get another lap in. Kieran Rollinson won't either. Checkered flag's going to come out at 0. They won't get to complete any laps they're on, unless I'm confusing this series again with multiple other series. The rules change between every series, and it sometimes gets confusing. Paul Blomqvist, he abandons his effort. Into the fence in the background goes someone else, losing it through the final corner. Can Antar Rafael Sabo get to the line? I don't think he even needs to. 20 seconds left. Runs it out into the gravel. That'll be an off track either way. And I don't think this lap will count if he does get to the line, which it looks like he will. With a couple seconds to spare. How's the lap look anyway for him? It was pretty quick. It was a 33.5. And in fact, it does count. And he improves by another couple tenths of a second. Half a second quicker than the field now. Fantastic lap right at the death from Sabo. And this is how they line up for race number 1. Sabo on the pole again by half a second over Rahali in second. Cockenden lines up in third ahead of Paul Blomqvist on his outside. Zane Hills and James Anderson line up on the third row of the grid ahead of Casey Sturrock and Gene Rollinson from 8th. Nicholas Lowndes and Matthew Griffin starting from 9th and 10th.
Matteo Quintini 11th, Royce Rollinson 12th, Jared Farwell 13th with Douglas Bigley 14th and Hayden Kirk 15th, Jonathan Shepley 16th, and then the last row, row number 9, Kieran Rollinson and Tony Lovelock, rounding out your 18 driver field for heat number 1.
Well, the weather conditions looking like for these drivers at the moment, it's probably on the hotter side. 37 degrees track temp in Celsius too. How about that? 21 degrees Celsius air temp is also cool day, but hot track. Cloud cover probably helping out in that as the sun beats down. It's top of the afternoon, 1:40, so expect the track to only get hotter. Not much wind to speak of, and every time I make that point, I cringe inside because it doesn't matter what the wind is to me because I don't know which direction the track is facing. But if it ever is a strong wind, which it was in a recent broadcast, as I said then, it'll give them a headwind into one of the corners and a tailwind into some of the other corners. And they'll find that out very quickly when they go racing. But only 6 kilometers an hour won't have much of an effect. As we roll off on our pace lap then, I think this start is going to be about as crucial as it will get all season long. Looking at this racetrack, I mean, what corners would you highlight as being potential overtaking spots? I think definitely turn 1.
Yeah, definitely turn number 1, and you can easily go side by side through there as well. Well, not easily, but it's possible to do due to the banking, and then you get a good battle into 2, 3, and 4. So I would say turn 1, turn 4 with an asterisk, because you need to get a great one out of 3, and 10 turns 9 and 10 potentially as the best ones, especially turn number 10, the Renault corner, because you get such a wide entry. And there's so many lines through there. You kind of want to take the wide line, but you can also take a tight line and shortcut it through the first pass, which gives you kind of a diving run into the corner. So 10 and 11 as well, potential passing spots as the battling spot, and then the chicane at 12 as well. So you got a couple of passing spots which are not easy, but definitely doable. There's more than one, and the one great thing about Zandvoort as a circuit, as we look towards 7, 6, and 5, all the way from turn 8, is that you get great opportunities for side-by-side battles.
See how tight the track is there? It's about 2 and a bit car widths wide. It's one of the narrower tracks, I reckon, on the service at the moment. Certainly in terms of road course racing. That long sweeping right-hander at the top of the circuit, which is Chevrolet, I think. Again, I'm not going to be attempting any of those much more today. That run out of turn 4 up through 5, 6, 7, that's an interesting one because you can get the run out of 4 and go side by side, but it's a section of racetrack that, in good conditions, you can take close to flat out. I think in these particular race cars, you're going to have to lift off, but as soon as you go side by side, you're going to lose an absolute ton of time because you're going to have to really compromise your speed to get through there, wheel to wheel, which can put you under a lot of pressure from behind. So expect a little bit of congestion up through that particular piece of racetrack today.
Yeah, especially through the first couple of laps in the first lap. It's going to be so interesting to see how they navigate the turns 2, 3, and 4 as they come to the hairpin, and then the exit of the hairpin as well. So, you know, it's gonna be an interesting start of the race, and I'm gonna predict the first couple of guys are gonna get away well, but the first sign of congestion, and we have a real risk of a major incident, but let's hope we can avoid that today.
This corner is a right thorn in the butt. A tight right into a sort of awkwardly length left-hander, which tightens up on the exit. It's quite wide on the entry. Two of the most difficult sequences on the racetrack. And then you open yourself up for these last two corners. So let's get this underway. Our sprint race, well, our normal race, so to say, before we reverse the grid for our second go at it later on. 25 minutes. Lap times in the range of a minute and a half, so expecting somewhere around 16, 17 upward laps. And it'll be Antal Rafael Sabo again. That leads us to the green. Rahali on his outside. Cockburn and Blomqvist from road number 2. Pace car into pit road, waiting on that green. There it is. And Sabo goes, and away we go in Zandvoort. Someone in the background trying to fan out very early on as the track narrows up into turn 1. Rahali trying to hold it around the outside of Sabo as Rahali is going to have to tuck in line now behind Cockburn, and Zane Hills are going wheel to wheel, and they touch, and Hills ends up in the grass, but he keeps it on the racetrack. By the time they get to the corner, gets it slowed down. Someone else had a similar issue in the background. Now Hills loses out to Cockburn, and here comes Blomqvist trying to pull alongside him as they go through 5, 6, and 7. And off the racetrack goes Blomqvist, straight on into the gravel, doesn't slow down, and he finds the Armco fence on the outside of the racetrack.
Yeah, and there's someone else spun around in front of him. That's Kieran Rollinson as well. And there is a joke about Blomqvist trying to, you know, imitate his father a little bit with the driving line there, being fast through the gravel stick, but not quite pulling it off. He's back on the racetrack, however. Gene Rollinson was also off on first lap, but other than that, surprisingly clean and very classy driving in the start. They were 3 wide, sometimes really bunched up, but they all made it through fairly cleanly out of first couple of corners.
Nicholas Lowndes just found his way up the inside of Griffin at that tight right corner, and that'll put him up into 7th position. So he finds a gain of 2 on the opening lap as James Anderson gets by Sturrock, then drops the tyres off the racetrack on the exit as Sturrock gets a run back in front of them as well. Hills was pretty close to the back of Cockburn into turn 1. That is about 100 yards, way too deep, and Sturrock goes nose first into the tyre bundle. That's the second driver today to miss the braking and go straight on and find very little speed being abated out in that gravel trap.
Yeah, he was already wide through the chicane, and then they went side by side. Nice crossover from Anderson. They went to the main straight. Sturrock tried to come back to the main straight. He succeeded, but braking way too late with the cold tires, and as a result of that, ends up in the tire wall. Unfortunate incident for him there.
So that leaves Sabo as a race leader by a second over Rahali. Cockburn sitting in 3rd ahead of Zane Hills. Right behind him, James Anderson. Now with a bit of breathing room in 5th after that mistake from Sturrock. Nicholas Lowndes, Matthew Griffin right behind him, Giantini, and Royce Rollinson as well in that mix. It's pretty tight, in fact, from Nicholas Lowndes on down. As I think you'll find Giantini made a little bit of a mistake up at that corner, and he has under pressure from Royce.
Yeah, he is. So it's Quintini, and then you got Royce, and then you got Gene as well. And Gene is coming back after starting from 8th place, and he was a little bit out in the first couple of corners. That was the second car we saw run wide in that corner number 2 and corner number 3 complex. And now he's trying to claw his way back past Royce first, and then past Matthew as well, ideally. But it's going to be a seesaw battle, I think, in these positions as Royce goes very late. Wow.
How late was that from Royce Rollinson, but he got it pulled up. Good job. Now, can he keep the car there? Going to be on the wrong side of the racetrack, and he recognises it and pulls out of it as they go through that right kink, which is actually deceptively tight. and then pull it back to the left into a corner where there is absolutely zero margin for error. You lock it up, you're going to find yourself in the barrier before you can even sort of unlock that brake, much like the street circuit at turn 4. Up the hill through 5, 6, through 7. A little bit wide from Royce there, but he will be able to fend off Gene Robinson, who's not quite within attacking range at the moment. This battle for P8 on the racetrack. I wonder if there's any, not team orders, but family orders between Robinson's here.
I think it's going to be more like bragging rights, you know, where at the Christmas table these guys are going to be like, well, remember what happened at Zandvoort? I beat you, didn't I? Pretty clean. And that makes for an interesting dynamic, because I know a couple of sim racing families and racing families, and always hearing their stories is so much fun, because that brother dynamic gives much more to the mix, and the family dynamic gives much more to the mix in there. So it's going to be very interesting to see who comes out in front in this particular one.
Well, I think one of the most recognisable brother combinations in real life would be maybe Kyle and Kurt Busch in NASCAR. And I heard recently from Kurt Busch where he said that him and Kyle have almost formed a bit of a teammate relationship on the racetrack. They race each other like teammates, and I guess cut each other a little bit of slack sometimes. And well, they've actually got quite a similar feel for how the car drives as their career's gone on. So I think you'd probably find that translates to most families who've got multiple members running in the same race. You don't want to really hit your family member off. It's going to become quite awkward. Maybe a little bit different in sim racing as opposed to racing for a cup championship in American stock car racing, but still, I think that applies. As Paul Blomqvist is on his charge back in 14th place now after fighting that fence. And looks like the damage isn't holding him up too much. Maybe we should pan our eyes back forward again, because there's been a little bit of contact there. 3 wide. Giantini ended up at the back of the train as Matthew Griffin got by him. Royce Rollinson copped, or gave him a little bit of a shove into the corner. Gene Rollinson cleaned him up as well. Giantini drops to 10th. Here's the replay.
Yeah, so it's going to be once again a passing opportunity into 10, and a little bit of contact here. Nice going around the outside, going a little bit wide, but that just goes to show you how much the track widens there. You can go 3 wide. It's not advisable, but you can do it, and you can make it pretty clean out of the exit as well. Great racing for those boys, and a great battle for position, which is about to continue onto the main straight.
There you go, that's very telling. Royce Rollinson pulls to the inside, off the racing line, rolls off the throttle, lets Gene go by him to take away P8. So they're not going to fight each other, not at this stage anyway. 18 minutes to go in this one. And they won't want to be letting Matthew Griffin get away, because we know he's got some pretty decent pace up his sleeve as well when he's able to execute it. Just give you an update on those gaps up at the front. Sabo's leading by 2.2 seconds, just steadily extending that gap back to Rahali, who's holding on pretty nicely, but is starting to get reeled in by Taylor Cochran in third, who's 3.3 off the race lead himself.
Yeah, so it's very interesting to see how Rahali can hold on to that second place, and well, it's going to be a battle we're going to be watching for a long time. That's just going to leave me hungry, because Rahali's got, of course, a pie sponsor in his car, Whitley's Pie's sponsoring that car, and that's going to make me hungry. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with food sponsors and racing when I'm doing commentary. But yeah, Cochran's going to catch him up slowly but surely. I think 2 tenths faster last time by, as you said, and looking very consistent out there.
Scottish, Finnish, doesn't matter who my co-commentator is, they're both going to pick up on the pie sponsorship on that car. You know what? Peter Mackay said exactly the same thing last week, Aussie, in the show. Look at this through the final corner. Gene Rollinson, if he looks in his mirror, he'll see his brother, I think, trying to get by Matthew Griffin after Gene got by him on this lap as well. Giantini's a bit boxed in with nowhere to go. And on the brakes, the inside's available for Griffin's. Oh, who's that? That's St. Hills off the racetrack. Griffin was able to hold on around the outside, by the way. Royce Rollinson wasn't able to follow Gene through. He's having a Hills down at turn 1.
Yeah, he's gonna come to the brakes with a nice timing, but a little bit too late ultimately, and gonna turn a little bit too much. Look up at that inside wheel, and then it's gonna be a lazy spin around. He did a great job of backing out of the racetrack actually, and getting out of the way, then spinning it around on the gravel and getting back on track with no damage, apart from that to his ego and tires.
I think Jeffrey Harley has made a mistake on this lap because he's fallen behind Taylor Cockerdin. And last time, Billy Cochran was on the attempt of the second back, and he was 6/10 away when we picked him up about a minute ago. So surely a mistake in the last lap has been the cause for that loss of position for Harley. What happened?
I can tell you what happened. It was he went over the curb on turn number 3, turned in a little bit too early, went over the curb, slid wide, and then as a result of that couldn't brake properly into 4 and ran wide, and then that just allowed Cochran to get up on the inside and get the easiest pass of his life.
Here's a replay then.
Yeah, just as I was busy explaining it, but you're gonna see it as well, giving a visual cue. So you're gonna see him cut up to the curb here to the inside, and then he's gonna run wide to the right side of the track here, left side in his view, and yeah, that's just gonna be a lock-up. Yeah, so lucky to not hit the wall, you're right.
That's the corner I was talking about earlier on, where it can almost feel like a street track, as there's been another incident. Douglas Bickley's got into the back of Jared Farrell, and I think Paul Blomqvist might have just had his left side scraped off, or the paint that is, as he tried to sneak by them. And Douglas comes out of the radio to apologise for that. Here's the replay on board with Bickley as he gets ever closer in the slipstream. He was in just an awkward position, didn't know whether he was close enough or not to go for the lunge. On the brakes, was much better on the brakes, and just gets into the back of him, turns him around, and Blomqvist just stops a little bit of a nudge as he squeaks on by. Bickley did not take the position. He waited for Farrell to gather it up. So with this being an old school racetrack, it brings about an element of it is incredibly easy to make mistakes.
Yeah, it is incredibly easy to make mistakes, and easy to pay for those mistakes as well, because you make the same mistake as on a more modern racetrack, but you're just gonna run wide onto the tarmac, run off, get an off track for your troubles, and carry on merrily. Here, you're gonna get into the grass, you're gonna get into the gravel, you're gonna get into the wall. So it's gonna be a whole different ball game in that sense. So you're gonna have to actually avoid making those mistakes, especially on such a narrow track. And I know it sounds obvious. To win the race, you must avoid making mistakes, but that's just so true here. And let's see if Royce and Matthew can avoid that here coming into turn number 1.
Ooh, that's deep. That's deep. He's locked it up. He's struggling. He manages to just keep it on the racetrack and just hold on to Giantini. And that was about as close as Royce Rollinson wants to get to firing off the road down at the exit of turn number 1. And with the mistakes that we're seeing, it's allowing some drivers to pick up spots, because when you're at a racetrack like this where it's hard to pass, that can breed mistakes in itself. When you're behind someone, the aggression levels start to rise. You start to get impatient because you know you're faster, but you just cannot make get yourself into clean air and get by them, and then you maybe start to push too hard or go for a move that isn't on. And it's why I love old school racetracks. Give me a track like Zandvoort any day of the week over Circuit Paul Ricard.
Oh yeah, that's a good pick. I was thinking, careful, you don't want to piss off somebody. But yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Zandvoort is one of those old school racetracks which we know and love as well. Blomqvist has speeded outside of your picture, so he's going to be pretty much out of contention here on the first one. And to add to that point you made about having to make passes, you have to, of course, make passes in this race as Rollinson slides out to the outside and the penalty.
Wait for a mistake to make your pass, like Rollinson did just there. And Giantini, for a moment, thought he might be able to capitalise on it. He still might yet. Is Rollinson going to go defensive? Yes, he is. Chases him across the racetrack, and Giantini's going to get asked to do it the hard way. Go the long way around at turn number 1. Very even on the brakes, and again, Rollinson struggles on the brakes at that corner. Runs wide. This time, Ricardo's outside, makes contact with Giantini. Giantini is going to start to be getting very, very impatient now.
Yeah, no kidding. One more notch like that, and I think Matthew Giantini becomes Matthew Guillotini with the way he's going to execute that overtake. You know, just gonna little bit off the top, turning up as a barber onto the next corner. But yeah, that was one more mistake from Royce heading into the braking zone. And that's just something Matthew's going to have to be aware about. So, okay, he can't get past from the outside. The guy's going to outbrake himself. What you going to do next? Brake nice and early,
There we go.
back up the inside, and just like that, maybe cross over onto the next one, onto the chicane. What do you think, Brian?
I think Rollinson needs to adjust his braking performance. Maybe he needs to send the bias a bit more rearwards or maybe more forwards. I think he's locking the front, so I'd send it rearwards for him because he's not pulling it up like he should be. He made the mistake a couple of corners ago. He's been very fortunate to hang on to this position over Giantini. The bad news is as he starts to hold him up, look who's being dragged into the picture. Zane Hills in 10th, who he knows got decent pace, was running up in 4th before he spun off the racetrack, and he was a second quicker than these two on the last lap. What about this lap? A 37.1 for Giantini, a 35.7 for Hills, 1.4 seconds quicker. So he's pulled in 2.5 seconds in the last 2 laps.
Yeah, and we say often in Finland, the whirl of two is the treat for third, and this indeed is one of those cases. Royce and Matthew battling, and Zane Hills maybe gonna bring up the rear and pick up those 2 positions. He would very much like to get back up the front after being in 4th place for a long time and making that mistake. As for the 5th place, Nicholas Lowndes and Gene Rollinson are gonna have a ding-dong battle as well heading into 10.
How about the pace that G. Rollinson is showing today after starting in 8th, falling back to 11th, got by that big group involving Giantini, Royce, and Griffin, and very quickly ran down Nicholas Lowndes. And how easy was that move? Give him the inside, and he'll clear him in just 1 corner. Will Lowndes have a look back? He will. Door gets shut in his face, and Gene Rollinson will hold on to that spot. So into the top 5 after being 11th after lap 1. Good drive from him so far. Our other biggest mover is Royce Rollinson, actually, +4. And Jonathan Shapley, Douglas Bickley, both +3. Tony Lovelock, +3 as well.
Yeah, and not the first great drive we've seen from somebody called Lowndes in, this part of the world. So it goes to fit the par. But yeah, Nicholas Lowndes gonna potentially climb himself back to 5th place even, ahead of Gene Rollinson at this rate.
James Anderson has had an incident.
Yeah, he has.
Just in front of these guys. Gene Rollinson will now have a chance at 4th place because Anderson, I reckon he might have spun.
And he
right where Lowndes has spun. Maybe,
yeah,
what's happened to Lowndes there? No damage on the car. We know Rollinson had just made the overtake, so there was no one behind. Here's Anderson, drops it off the outside of the track and grabbed that fence pretty hard. Be lucky to escape that without damage. Just ran a bit wide. Didn't quite meet the apex, and how tight that corner is.
Yeah, and that's just one of those things, and you're gonna see Lowndes come up behind him, look, oh, he had an incident, lock up the brakes and just spin it on the exit. That's a lazy spin, and that's a bit of a lapse of concentration perhaps, and let's see how he's gonna get back on track. Don't get stuck on the curb, don't reverse to the wall, and that's a great job, I reckon, getting back in there and getting back going, because that's not an easy task, facing the traffic in a tight hairpin.
Probably didn't want to do a typical flick spin because there was a high chance of finding the fence if he tried that. So good job to get that pointed back in the right direction. So there's now a very tight battle for 2nd and a very tight battle for 4th because Rahali, by the way, is closed in on Cockadin. Tight battle for 7th as well. Royce Rollinson, Zane Hills darting across the racetrack. Guess what? Rollinson's locked up again into turn 1, but Hills copycat pretty much in there. Locked it up as well. Yeah, I think this is pretty good recovery from Hills after that mistake early on at this stage.
Yeah, it is, and he's cutting up a couple of those curves really tight on the inside. I don't quite like the look of that because that slows you down a little bit on the exit, but that's his line and that's what he's chosen. Peeking his nose up to the inside and trying to put pressure on Royce. Let's see if he does it into 8. not quite gonna be able to pull it off. That's a very fast corner, but look out into 10. Great exit from 9 and 10, potentially up the inside of 10. That's gonna be his game plan, and no, he's not quite close enough.
Up the road, Gene Rollinson is hounding the back of Anderson now. He will be ruining that mistake because it's put him under a lot of pressure when he was under absolutely none. Lapped car in front, it's Kieran Rollinson. Does he want to help out his brother? Well, he stopped James from taking the full racing line there. Don't think it held him up too much, and he tried to get out of the way, ended up in the grass trying to do so, so good job there from Kieran. Now, is Gene close enough to carry the momentum through the final corner? Maybe try and slingshot him or outbrake him down into turn number 1? I don't think he is. He's about 3 car lengths back, about 2 car lengths too far to make the move, but he is very strong on the brakes there. Closes right up to that rear bumper, but you've got to get to that B pillar to make a clean overtake. Zane Hills comes to pit road.
Yeah, I think he had too much damage after that spin and hitting the wall and having to come back to pit road to repair that car. But yeah, Gene was very good on the brakes and it was very impressive. Not only was he like way later on the brakes than Anderson, he was also able to get the car turned nice and early. So he didn't lock up the brakes, he didn't like run wide of turn 1 Tarzan corner. Instead, he was nice and early turning in, and that's going to show to Anderson that, okay, this guy behind me, he can get me on the brakes, and that's going to be a real threat.
Indeed it is. Here's Jonathan Shapley running in 13th position. That's a little bit of contact there with Farewell. Those two are battling for position. Farewell's just got by on this lap.
Yeah, blink and you miss it. So up in
I was trying to think of a retort that would match the level of that pun, but I just couldn't think of one. It's just too good.
Don't think. Speak. It's your job.
Sometimes I speak and I don't think, and it goes very, very badly. Gene Rollinson is still unable to find a way by James Anderson. These two pretty close on pace, and this is going to be the story of race 2, I think, because yes, it's a reverse grid, and not to be disrespectful to anyone, the slowest guys, in theory, are going to be at the front. Maybe Blancfest with the exception there with his mistake, meaning he was going to actually nab pole. But Sabo's going to have Cochran and Rahali second and third. They're only a couple tenths off him in terms of lap pace. I don't think that's enough for him to just get up and pass them. He's going to have to really work hard to get by them. And then, you know, you add all the other guys into the mix. Going to be really tough. And what we're seeing now between Rollinson and Anderson being very evenly matched, I think we're going to see this again in our next race. Although Rollinson will at least get to start in front of him. And if he doesn't pass him here. Another laps car to deal with. That is Tony Lovelock, who's 15th. He stays on the racing line. And James Anderson will be given the corner here. Good job from Lovelock. Oh, that's a little bit awkward, though, for Gene. And that's actually going to cost him about half a second, maybe. Just awkward. It's tough as a laps car on a track like this.
It is. It very much is. And Lovelock, I think he was trying to be predictable, staying on the racing line, giving the inside, but maybe didn't quite realize that there was 2 cars behind him and didn't want to like do anything drastic, which is the right thing to do. But the proper thing to do at that situation as a lapped car, when you come onto the straight and you know they're behind you but not quite up to you, you tap the brake lights a couple of times, let them know that you saw them, and then pull over from the racing line and let them both by. That's the safest way to do it, especially in that situation where you don't have much to lose.
I think there's 2 schools of thought there, Ozzy. I think it actually depends on where you sort of
it's true.
come from, I think, because I've often gone for the approach, or I think most commonly hear of the approach. This is an issue there for Shapley at that particular corner we're referencing, where stay on the racing line, you can drive slower on the racing line and they can drive around you. I think it's my NASCAR passion that's speaking out there, because in NASCAR there is no blue flags. You've got to get by the laps car with your sheer pace, and I think that crosses over into other sections as well, but it's often safer to stick on the racing line and be predictable, because if you change your line right when the lead lap car changes their line to drive around you, that's where you can have a collision very easily. So, circumstances, I think. All depends on circumstances. As we're coming up to our final lap of race 1, and this battle for P4 is going to go right down to the wire. Best opportunity is going to be down here on turn 1. This is his last chance to get it done at the first corner, and it's as close as it's been for quite some time. Anderson knows it. He defends all the way to the wall, and Gene Rollinson going to lurch and launch all the way around the outside. A pinch on the brakes, a locked right front from James Anderson is enough for Rollinson to just squeeze in front of him. They bump bumpers just a bit on the entry to 3, but I think Rollinson has got that one sealed, stamped, and delivered. 4th place for him after dropping to 11th on lap 1. Good practice for race 2. And I think James will be a little bit disappointed to have made that mistake, because if he just held the inside, he might have been able to hold on for the rest of the lap, of which Sabo has almost completed. 3 opening races in a row to open up the season. Until Rafael Sabo has the championship lead, and that margin will extend by a fraction as he will come out of the final corner. And it's race win number 3 for Sabo here at Zandvoort. Didn't need to worry about overtaking because he qualified on the pole. Race win goes to Sabo.
Excellent job for him, and Cochran and Rahali gonna come home 2nd and 3rd ahead of Rollinson and Anderson. Anderson's gonna be kicking himself over the head with that mistake, but he has chance to make amends on the 2nd race as we watch the rest of the guys coming through the field as well, coming to the finish line and then completing race number 1. And then we have all the time in the world, Ryan, to talk about race number 2, because that's gonna be quite an interesting one.
It will be. I said Sabo didn't have to worry about overtaking in this one. He's gonna have to worry about it 18 times in the next one. And much like Phillip Island, we're going to see quite a fast driver start towards the front, courtesy of a mistake in race 1, dropping them to dead last. And Paul Blomqvist will be the time. Let's cock it in round 1. Blomqvist to get that opportunity now. Let's go through our race results then at the end of the first half of our round from Zandvoort. It's Antal Rafael Sabo that wins by 4.8 seconds over Taylor Cochran, who comes home in 2nd, ahead of Jeff Rahali, who rounds out that podium in 3rd. Gene Rollinson and James Anderson round out the top 5 in their battle that went right down to the final lap of the race, ahead of Matthew Griffin in 6th, Royce Rollinson in 7th, Matthew Giantini, Zane Hills, and Douglas Bickley rounding out your top 10.
Jared Farwell gonna finish 11th, Hayden Kirk gonna be 12th, then it's Nicholas Lowndes 13th, getting a penalty actually on the final lap, and then Shapely's gonna actually finish ahead of him 13th, and Lowndes gonna be last on the lead lap 14th, with Stark, Rollinson and Lovelock 1 lap down, and Paul Blomqvist, as said before, 7 laps down, the only retirement of his race.
So let's talk about race 2 then. Overtaking. I think that race pretty much went as expected in terms of how much drivers struggle to complete any moves and actually get them done. It took a lot of mistakes, and we saw a lot of mistakes early on. They started to dwindle a little bit later. Do you think that's just a case of the cold tires catching guys out? I mean, we were seeing it 10 or so minutes into the race even. Just quite lazy mistakes. What do you think the story is there? Just a case of a lot of pressure around such a tight track?
Yeah, and Zandvoort is the kind of track where you're gonna see a lot of mistakes, especially under braking, especially in the 1, which is the kind of place where you kind of feel like, okay, I can brake later, because it's a hairpin, but it's a banked hairpin. And there's clear braking points, and you're gonna be like, you're gonna be gaining confidence all the time throughout the race, and at some point you're gonna push the envelope a little bit too far, and that's what causes the mistakes. as well as the high curbs in 2, 3, and 4, which are gonna cause even more errors. So I think that's a big thing why we saw so many mistakes in that first sector.
I just saw a shot for a fraction of a second there of Dale Jr. and Steve Myers standing under the bridge, and that's really good. I saw that because I received a picture earlier today from another one of our directors of those two in iRacing standing under a bridge, and I thought to myself, where on earth has he taken this photo? And I was going to ask the Twitter universe. I probably still will ask the Twitter universe where they found it, but at least now I know the answer. Zandvoort, under the bridge. And you can find them at every single racetrack in iRacing. Dale Jr., of course, NASCAR Hall of Famer. I think he's not quite inducted yet, but I think we could all safely say he will be. And Steve Myers, VP of iRacing.
Yeah, and there's, I don't think neither of those guys have worked at a restaurant, because otherwise we would have a lot of waiter under a bridge.
Yeah, I didn't get that one.
Yeah, a lot of water, a lot of water under a bridge.
Finnish people. They're jokes. I just don't get them.
Yeah, no, they lack a bit of Finnish, I suppose. I mean, and they're not quite as sweet as they're supposed to be.
Oh,
but
stop,
I would really love you to check them out before I ran away. Anyway, 2.5 minutes still to the start of race number 2. So I think we gotta talk about strategy here a little bit. Paul Blomqvist, he's on the pole position. He's gonna be the favorite, but it really comes down to how quickly can those other fast guys make their way through the field, and how much of a gap can Paul extend during those first couple of laps. Of course, it's not gonna be a given that he's gonna run away, because at first lap anything can happen. Lovelock can throw it up the inside, and then we're gonna have a battle and a bit of a traffic jam as well. But yeah, it's gonna be a story of 2 races where some of those guys are gonna inevitably fall down, or the guys are gonna charge back up the field, and it's gonna give them a lot of frustration and a lot of sense of hurry as well. They're gonna be in a bit of a haste. Guys like Sabo, Cockburn, Rahali, and Rollinson, and all those guys are gonna be like Gene Rollinson, that is. All those guys are gonna be in a hurry to get back up the front. So Ryan, it's always an interesting dynamic, so to speak.
You talk about anything can happen in lap 1. It's not a given that Blomqvist is going to run away with it. Well, at this quarter, on lap 1 and race 1, Blomqvist fired it off the racetrack. So he's got to avoid doing that again. I think for everyone else, it's not a case of getting to the front and winning. Yes, we've seen drivers go from the back to the front in both races so far. Completely different racetracks. Even Sabo, though, from last, hasn't won. He's finished 2nd and he's finished 4th. Going to be tough. You've got to just set your sights on getting to the end and trying to consolidate maybe a top 5 finish. Because you know this is going to be one of the tougher reverse grid races of the year. And you know you've got a fast driver out front who could run away like Cockburn did in round 1. And the only thing that might hinder some of those guys that are able to skip away is the potential of a safety car intervention. We've seen it in 3 races so far this season. Race 2 and race 1 at Phillip Island, but also race 2 at Road Atlanta. Haven't seen it today yet, such wood, which is actually a little bit surprising given the nature of this place. Warm-up, or the breather, between our races is done. It was 5 minutes in length, and we are getting set for our second race. It's still 25 minutes, no extra time to help you get through the field. You just got to get it done. And, well, your starting grid, it's the complete inversion of how they finished race 1. And if you want to see where your favorite driver is in the field at all times, make sure you head to gsrc.tv to stay up to date with all your favorite drivers and their best lap times, what they're currently running, and who they're trying to overtake or defend from on the racetrack. Like that Red Bull livery from Matthew Griffin. Works pretty well on that BMW M8 GTE machine. the well-known vehicle because it is about 10 times the size of other GTE vehicles, it would seem.
Yeah, and talking about BMW vehicles and talking about, of course, this is a BMW series, so of course they're driving BMWs, but they also got a bit of a carrot in for the mix for the best rookie driver. So there's gonna be driving experience, BMW E30 driving experience for the best rookie driver in this series, a free track day in an E30 race car. So you can get to drive all day with Matt Griffin as your coach, and I think that would be quite a fantastic experience, honestly. Like that's a carrot and a half.
Yeah, you can't have done any real-life motorsport before. That's the only caveat there. That might rule a couple of these drivers out, but it's fantastic to give one of those guys a chance to get behind the wheel of a BMW E30 and have a rip around the racetrack. I think it's either Hampton Downs or potentially Pukekohe, maybe. Don't quote me on that. They're the only two racetracks I know off the top of my head in New Zealand at the moment. Pukekohe, Hampton Downs. I know there's a lot more than that. Either way, you're looking for that at the end of the season. That's the ultimate goal. For Blomqvist wants his pace car to get a move on. I will say it is awfully slow. 64 kilometers an hour at the pace speed around what is a 4.3 kilometer circuit. Means I'm desperately hoping we don't get a safety car intervention, because it will take a god awful long time for it to clear. Because automatic pace cars or safety car interventions on road racing and iRacing use the oval format, which is why they're not featured in official series and why they can often take a little bit too long, and why anyone who opts to use it at the Nordschleife should be sent to jail for 50 years.
Yeah, it's gonna be a 20-minute lap at 60 km an hour with the in the Nordschleife. I've almost experienced that when my sister's dad took me a lap around there in real life in a Volvo V70. It took around 14 minutes for us to take a lap in the tourist circuit, and that was fun. But at least I get to say I've been there, so there's that. And it's going to be very exciting. Already drivers jostling for positions, and I think the guys in the back of the field are going to be like, okay, keep the gaps close and don't make any silly moves into turn number 1, because it's going to be quite a view for guys like Sabo and Cocoton and Chin and all those other guys in the back, just to watch and hope that they don't see a spinning car in the first couple of corners. But they made it reasonably clean through in race number 1. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't do the same in race number 2.
Rapuna. That's the other racetrack that I was thinking of that I couldn't think of the name for. I don't know if I said it right, but just saving my own grace here. I can name 3 New Zealand racetracks. Maybe I should be able to name more. Either way, we are about to get a start for this one. Blomqvist and Lovelock on the front row. They finished 8 laps and 2 laps down, respectively. Rollinson and Sturrock on row 2 both finished a lap down. So, good opportunity for these 4 to recover from the mishaps of race 1. Blomqvist just questioning start procedure in the 11th hour, as he will let the pace car peel off to pit road. He has slowed the field right down. And away we go. Green flag is out. Middle of the field stacks up a bit, and Zane Hills round the outside. Oh no, they're 4 wide. They're 4 wide into turn number 1. Who's gonna be the one to get caught out? 3 wide through the corner. You are kidding me. That is absolutely sublime. They've made it through there. They were 4 and 3 abreast.
That is insane, and they're clean all the way to the back.
Oh, there it goes. Nicholas Lowndes gets turned around into the fence, collected by 3 more. Taylor Kokkanen got a little piece of that. That
Douglas
would be big for the championship.
Yeah, Douglas Bickley was stuck there as well, and he's still out there trying to get back from the 8th place. But yeah, good racing going on until that. But still, how did they make it through that turn number 1? I will never know.
Bickley got turned off the nose of Cockett as they were both on the outside with nowhere to go when they encountered the spinning Lowndes with that street circuit field of turn 4. And Bickley's car may have saved Cockett from any substantial damage. There'll be some big movers on this opening lap, which I'll highlight at the end of the lap when the iRacing leaderboard updates, and it becomes a little bit easier to see where they started and where they're currently running. But it is Blomqvist from Sturrock, Hills, Rollinson and Farewell. Hills was a catalyst for the 4 wide at a monstrous start, and that is not how to take that corner from Farewell, as they're 3 wide behind him, trying to get by a slow-moving car. And Shapley going a little bit slow. Griffin going by him. Yeah, when Hills got that start, he took them 3 wide. There was a slow-moving car who they all had to avoid then, and that's how they ended up 4 wide as someone grabs the fence. That's Giantini, and around he goes. And who's that taken out with him? Cockett finds the fence hard as well. And did that take Sabo as well?
I don't think it took Sabo. I think Sabo got away with that one. Yeah, he's just ahead. He's in turn number 2 already. But big hit for those guys at the tail end of lap number 1, and that's a hard lick to the wall.
The lap, you thought he'd escaped damage with the incident at turn 4, and his luck was holding out. Then Cockett gets cleaned up as Giantini has a big incident exiting the final corner, drops it into the grass, trying to carry the momentum onto the main straight. It was a bit too fast, and he almost caught it, and eventually it snapped. Around he went into Cockett, and they pretty much spun on the nose of Sabo, I reckon, as that happened, as Rollinson now throws it off the racetrack. There's a lot happening right now. Zane Hills gained 7 spots on lap 1. Who's that? That's Casey Sturrock, who's gone off the track as well. So Hills went +7 on the opening lap. James Anderson went +9. Matthew Griffin up 8. And Sabo up 7. So there your massive movers on the opening stage of this one. Lap 2. And Sabo's just been given a massive hit from Sturrock in the rear end into that tight right-hander in the middle of the racetrack. A lot of damage to one of the cars there as well in the front of the shop.
There is a fair bit of damage to all of those guys. So you got Rahali, Kirk in the battle, Griffin as well, Sabo. Then Sabo's got a bit of rear end damage as a result of those incidents. A couple of guys opting to take it to the pit lane as well. Little bit of wear and tear out there. Sabo's up to 8th place, and they're battling ahead of him, Hayden Kirk and Matthew Griffin. So he has his sights set all the way to P number 5. And yeah, I think that's the car of Royce, I think, who has the front end damage. No, that's Hayden Kirk. That's Hayden Kirk, yeah, with the big front end damage. And I'm gonna tell you, I've never seen a BMW modified before, but it's time for everything.
With Sturrock throwing it off the racetrack, it elevated everyone up a spot pretty much. Zane Hills is in the 2nd, +8. Anderson in the 3rd, +11. Rahali in 4th, +12. Rollinson, +7. Hayden Kirk, +1 with damage. Griffin, +6. Sabo in 8th, despite seemingly being involved in almost every incident. +10. Cops another whack from Sturrock. That's the 2nd time he's got into the back of him, as Sabo's had to check up for slow-moving cars in front, being Griffin, who's stuck behind Kirk.
Yeah, so Kirk, Griffin, Sabo, Sturrock gonna continue their seesaw battle. I think Sabo's gonna soon be on the radio as Sturrock locks up again his brakes heading into the chicane. He's being really aggressive behind Sabo, and I think Sabo's really sweating there for a good reason, because there's nowhere he can really go. He's got a battle ahead of him. He can't really just force his way past the meter, and Sturrock really has to understand the situation and perhaps wait just a little bit longer, as Sabo's gonna get onto the main straight as Griffin and Kirk go side by side.
Griffin gets the run out of the final corner and makes the move. Sabo wants to follow him while that gap is there, but I tell you what, Hayden Kirk really pinched him down in the corner, and is that enough to hold on to that spot? So Sabo's going to have to work to open up that gap. Won't be able to rely on Griffin opening it up now that Griffin's got through. As Sturrock throws it off the racetrack behind them. Rahali was the fastest car on the track last time by. Giantini is having issues on this run up the hill. Just got disguised by the cars as they blazed by the camera, but he's got big damage that's in the grass at the moment. What was Rahali's uptime on the last lap? It was a 34.2.
Yeah, tell you what, Quintini is still trying to make it back to the pit lane after that incident on the main straight. So you can't fault the man for trying. And he's halfway around, and I'm rooting for him to make it around in about 2 laps time for the leader. So that's a little bit of a tidbit for you there. As we're watching this battle, another thing I want to bring up is Paul Blomqvist and Zane Hills is now the 1-2, the leading duo. And Zane Hills was 5th in the qualifying for race number 1 with Paul Blomqvist 4th. So there wasn't much of a difference between those guys at all. And that's true.
That was a little bit too optimistic from Starek. Sabo himself was late on the brakes to get alongside Kirk, and Starek just overcommitted. His eyes lit up when he saw the gap, and inevitably didn't work out. He goes for a spin. Kirk continues, but now behind Sabo. The deficit of traffic highlighted as Sabo puts in a 36.3 after we saw Rahali doing a 34.2. He does a 34.6 on that lap. And he's actually closed up to the back of James Anderson now. 4P3 in this one. There's Paul Blomqvist out front. 2.8 second gap to Hills. 5.8 back to Anderson and Rahali here in 3rd and 4th. 10 seconds back to Rollinson in 5th. That's Royce Rollinson, by the way.
Yeah, 3 of them in this race. Royce is the one leading that particular battle. As Rahali's gonna take it up to the inside, and oh, he's just gonna tap Anderson round. I think there was a little bit of netcode involved in that one, and that was Kieran Rollinson, by the way, who you may have seen in front of your shot from 16th place as well, spinning out. But that was a little bit brave heading that late up to the inside into 9, and that was not gonna work out unless Anderson was gonna give room, and he did not.
Remember Sabo and Griffin at the end of the last race? Well, Sabo's got by him much quicker this time. Hip checked him and escorted him a little bit wide just to make sure he had that move done. Relatively opportunistic, as Griffin was slow through this section. Locked it up, and that was enough for Sabo to dive to the inside and run a little bit wide. Gave him a touch right there. And Griffin unable to hold on to that position. So good move. Up into P5 then for Sabo. 11.9 off your race leader. 16 minutes to go. Going to be one heck of a stretch for him to get there. But he's already in that P5 spot where I said drivers can actually consolidate a decent top 5 in this reverse grid. A lot of action early on has allowed our fast guys to move through the field very quickly.
Yeah, it has. I'm especially impressed by Zane Hills, how he took that start and then managed to opportunistically get his way all the way to 2nd place, and now in clear air chasing Blomqvist for the lead. And Sabo's gonna have to. He's had to battle for it. He's had nothing for free today, really. He's had maybe a couple of positions, but aside from that, Sabo's had to battle for each and every one of them. And now he's to the back of Rollinson.
Caution has come out. So we are going to get a safety car intervention this round to keep up that 100% record, and that's going to condense our field up now. And that means we'll probably restart with about 11 or 12 minutes to go with the length of these pace car laps. And Paul Blomqvist will be sorely disappointed to see this one come out, as he has, he has a 3-second advantage just completely dissipated to Zane Hills, who we know is fast. Rahali, who qualified 2nd, we know is fast. Royce Rollinson's got Sabo behind him. And will certainly have his hands full to hold him off on the restart. Sabo had almost got close enough to make the move before the caution came out. I reckon this is a competition caution in these reverse grid races.
Yeah, it very well could be. And tell you what, if I could pass one message to race control, it is give Matteo Gintini his lap back, because he's 1 lap down, but he eventually, after all that trouble, he made it back to the pit lane, and he's got a spare car, and he's right back out there racing. And if that isn't commitment, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, I think they do the wave around under these pace cars. Every series, competition, has their slightly different rulings, but I believe that Gintini will be the recipient of a wave around here. As Nicholas Lowndes brings it to pit road from 14th place, potentially a bit of damage on that car that they want repaired, and a spare car. Was that a pass-through? Did they actually stop? I think he stopped. Straight through the pit lane. Interesting.
That's one way to do it, I guess. Gonna explore the pit lane, maybe, give high fives to his mechanics mid-race. Why not?
Track temp has come down 4 degrees as well from the start of our first race. It's an hour later in sim. So that might be aiding drivers a little bit in terms of ultimate track grip. Wind hasn't changed. Humidity, I honestly have no clue how humidity affects the racetrack. A commentator, not a meteorologist.
Yeah, so humidity, it doesn't have large effect, but it primarily affects how the engine can get heat, because the more humid the air is, the more rich it also is. So you can get a little bit more air into the engine, and of course it affects also the density of the air as well. So it's gonna make it a little bit more draggy. It's a very, very insignificant effect unless it's raining though. So it's one of those very few minor things that affects it technically, but practically you don't see much of a difference. So you could be racing in Australia or you could be racing in a rainforest, and you wouldn't notice much of a change.
Humidity is probably the same.
Depends on the part of Australia, I guess. I was thinking more like outback, a racetrack around the Ayers Rock maybe.
Yeah.
That's one of the 3 Australian landmarks I know. The Great Barrier Reef, the Sydney Opera House, and the Ayers Rock.
Yep. That's about it.
Ouch. That's I don't know whether that was a happy answer or a sad answer. It was like just an answer. That's just like the answer to a tourist. Yeah, that's Australia, all right. You're gonna see it.
There's also Perth, but we don't speak about Perth. We don't go there. Ever.
Oh, that's the dark place, right?
Yeah. It takes much longer to fly from where I am to Perth as it does to probably fly from you to Joe in America.
Oh, it would take me around, I don't know how many, but it's 8 time zones between us.
Oh, damn.
I know.
Never mind. I've slightly overestimated. 11 hours and 45 minutes from Helsinki to United States. I don't know where that's landing.
What was that city once again?
Helsinki.
Helsinki.
Close enough. It would take me...
I don't live in mayonnaise. I don't live in mayonnaise, thank you very much.
Yeah, whatever. It's some proper city names. Like Perth and Sydney and Adelaide. Wellington.
Well, that's Boots.
It's also a city in New Zealand.
Yeah, that it is too. Auckland and Wellington and a couple of others in there as well. Let's not go to geography, because I think my New Zealand geography will be 95% based on the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
We all know we're still better off than Joe, because, as we know, Americans typically have zero grasp of any geography outside of their own country. Isn't that right, true. Joe? Joe said depending where it is. He knows the major ones. Yeah, Joe knows the major ones. America, USA, Canada. You
and also
America,
England.
Yeah.
Also England being a country. That's a big one. And then the great country, of course, the US equivalent in Europe, which is the European Union, a singular country, of course. Or just Europe. Oh, how much easier history would have been had that been the case. But yeah, anyway.
We've been under pace car for 6 minutes, by the way.
Yeah, this is what happens when you're under pace car for 6 minutes. We would not make a great NASCAR duo.
They have pit reporters, though, and analysts and crew chiefs and all this. We've got... I was going to say we've got a Finnish man and Australian and a American behind the scenes. Where's our pit reporters and our crew chiefs?
Yeah. The thing is that that's the start of a joke, and I'm gonna also reply briefly to a comment. I think for the next time, Ryan, each one of us gets 5 New Zealand facts for this caution period. Whatever they may be, we get a New Zealand fact. And then we have to, like, compare those facts in the course
given
of the...
99% of the UK right now is New Zealand. You know, you can't tell a New Zealand person a fact about their own country. They're probably gonna know it, Aussie. You didn't think that one through, did you?
No, not really, no. But yeah, I mean, just to showcase our knowledge, I guess. I mean, we gotta make amends somehow for our lack of New Zealand knowledge. But anyway, Paul Blomqvist still leading this race, Zane Hills second, Rahali third, Rollinson fourth, and Sabo fifth. And it's gonna be a very interesting restart with Sabo starting fifth and 8 minutes left. It's gonna be around 6 or 5 minutes left once we come back to the line and get back to racing, actually. So it's gonna be a real charge from Sabo, and I wonder, could he still pull it off?
Well, another lap under pace car. The length of this lap was 3 minutes and 59 minutes. Does this mean that we're going to restart with just over 3 minutes to go? And the caution came out at 15 minutes into left in the race, so definitely an elongated pace car intervention, which is good news for Paul Blomqvist because it means he doesn't have long to fend off those hard-charging, fast drivers behind him.
The bad news is that they're gonna be all the more anxious to get through him because there's so little time left, so it kind of works both ways.
Yeah. I think guys like Rahali and Sub are going to be extremely aggressive, potentially off this restart. Our front row sitters, race 1, where we had qualifying to set the grid. I think Rahali's got a good shot, restarting third. Zane Hills has got pace, and if his restart is anything like his initial start, he could well lead this race before we complete our first lap back under green. Rahali could very much follow him through. Sabo's got to deal with Royce Rollinson, though.
Yeah, and Royce Rollinson was about to talk about him briefly because when you look at the starting positions in race 1, the qualifying performance of the drivers who are right now in the top 5, if you look at their qualifying, Paul Blomqvist qualified 4th, Zane Hills 5th, Jeff Rahali 2nd, and Sabo, of course, pole position and race winner. Royce Rollinson, however, he was 12th in qualifying, finished 7th, so he got up 5 places already in that first race. That means he started 12th here, and once again, now he's up to 4th, so he's there as a bit of a dark horse, really, in this battle. He's not the kind of guy who was expected to maybe be in top 5, but here he is, and he could really pull off an upset podium here.
Matthew Giantini's been a bit hard done by here. No wave around given to him, which is a bit stiff, given we have seen him in the last 2 rounds, and he did a spectacular job to only be 1 lap down after his slow crawl back to pit lane. He's going to need to hope for some major carnage on this restart if he wants to pick up spots, because next car ahead of him is a lap ahead. That's Nicholas Lowndes, who runs in 15th and is actually behind him on the racetrack for the restart. So Giantini's slightly out of position here, which might throw a spanner in the works. Some of those guys further down the order, as you see a lot of them working their tyres, trying to get them back up to temperature, running around for about 11 to 12 minutes. At 60 kilometers an hour, we'll cool those tyres down to an icy round brick. An icy round brick. You know, I don't think that really equates. That's too square.
A snowball.
You get the point. You get the point I'm trying to make. Yeah. Gonna feel like a snowball underfoot for these guys. So Paul Blomqvist will lead the field back to green with 4 minutes remaining. 3 laps, I reckon, we've got until the checkered flag. Can he fend them off? Pace car gonna dive to pit road. Let's see. This is gonna be aggressive and wild. Hills is shadowing his bumper. Here we go. He looks out, but he hasn't got the run, so he dives back to the inside to cover off Jeff Rahali. And now Rahali goes to the inside as Hills launches the long way round. Sabo gets a hit, and he spins in the middle of the corner. Can they all get around him? Yes, they can. But your championship leader goes right to the back of the field after contact with Royce Rollinson. Blomqvist has held off Rahali and Hills on lap. The first half of the lap, crucially, Hills has lost out to Rahali.
He has, so it's not going to be pretty much a 3-way battle for that lead, with Royce in 4th place, probably feeling a little bit bad about that one. Just couldn't get the car stopped in time into turn number 1 with cold brakes and cold tires. But here we go, Rollinson and Griffin fighting for 4th place behind the leading trio, and I think that's going to be pretty close, because Griffin, look at him, he's looking at the brakes, he's right behind. Meanwhile, Rahali and Hills side by side.
Oh, Rahali running a bit wide of the apex and forcing Hills out wide. Maybe a little bit of contact. They definitely touched there down the straight. And in fact, Rahali's backed out of it and allowed Hills to take the spot for now. Behind them, Taylor Cockerdin managed to get by Hayden Kirk on this lap. In fact, he's picked up a few spots. He's picked up 3 on this lap, which is good stuff for his championship. He should leapfrog Sabo coming out of this round, with him running back in 15th. Good recovery for Cochran after being involved in an accident early on in this race. And oh no, he's coming to pit road. That'll be a drive-through. Too many incidents in this race, which is why we saw Nicholas Lowndes on pit road earlier as well for a drive-through. Suddenly Sabo the advantage in the championship fight again. How tight is this? Griffin, Rollinson, Anderson, 3 into 1. They all come out the other side. Rollinson had to use the grass though.
Yeah, he had to use the grass and loses out 2 places. Dark Horse, we were talking about going from 4th to 6th. Anderson gonna continue to hound Griffin, though. He's very close, coming up into it's squeezing it down the inside, and that was never going to work. And Griffin's out, and Griffin's in the fence as well. Wow, so he's gonna go back into his status as a mythical creature instead of being in a lead battle after this one.
Anderson with an issue as well. I think that's at redress, actually. It is. He gathers it back up, and it's very messy back here at the tail end of the field. Sabo's in amongst us as well. There he is. Up the road, Farrell all over the back of Shapley for Knight for 7th. They started the lap in 10th and 11th. They've both gained a few thanks to the mishaps of others. And we'll begin our final lap of the race as we come around the last corner and to the start finish line. One more lap at Zandvoort. Paul Blomqvist with a 1.5 second advantage. It is on. Behind him though for second, Hills and Rahali side by side into turn 1. Hills trying to fend off Rahali in that Whitey Pies machine.
Yeah, let's just hope that Hills ain't gonna get a pie to the face in one of these corners, as he's hounding Hills very hard, trying to get the position. So far, no luck, but he's getting good exits. He's once again into this twisty straight that isn't straight at all. He's getting good exits, and he's trying to get it to Hills. You can't really pass into 8 as we saw last time by, not without cooperation, but he might have a chance to get a good exit of 9 and 10 into 10 and 11. Force that issue a little bit, get that battle. Don't pass here yet, go into the next one. Here we go.
Can have to time this right. Very quickly running out of opportunity to snatch the second step on the podium. Is there a look there? No, Hills is able to cover it off. What about the drive, exiting the corner? It's much better for Rahali. And Hills is going to have to defend the inside. This is going to really compromise his line through the corner. Watch for the crossover from Rahali. Can he do it? Across the back bumper. No, he can't. Hills covers it again. Just one more corner remains. It's not really an overtaking spot. He shows a nose. He lurks, and he looks, and he gets alongside. They're going to drag race all the way through the final corner to the line. Out front, Paul Longfist going to take out race 2 for his first win of the season. Behind them, absolute, almost a dead heat. And it's just won by Zane Hills by a bumper.
Yeah, by 1.5 hundredths of a second, Zane Hill run the outside. Zane Hills run the outside, getting the better run. And a couple of guys having to up to the pit lane as well on the last lap, Quintini and Anderson. So we're going to get the rest of them through the line. But yeah, you're going to see a replay of it here, Ryan. And just watch these as they come across the line. You don't get closer than that. Boom. Wow.
Good finish for second. Good drive from Paul Longfest to secure that race win and recover very well from his error or errors in race 1. Let's look at our race results then from our second race here at Zandvoort Park. Or Circuit Park Zandvoort, if you will. 1.9 seconds is his winning margin over Hills and Rahali. Look at that gap between them, as you say, a tenth and a half. Half a tenth. Half a hundredth of a tenth. Royce Rollinson home in 4th ahead of Hayden Kirk. Douglas Bickley claims 6th ahead of Farewell, Lowndes, Shapley and Cockenden. That's quite an interesting top 10.
It is indeed. Gene Rollinson ending up 11th. James Anderson 12th, Matthew Griffin 13th with Anton Rafael Sabo, who was so good in race number 1, getting spun around, ending in 14th place, 10-1 lap down. Kieran Rollinson, Matthew Quintini, Casey Stark 2 laps down, and Tony Lovelock classified as DNF of this second race. And Ryan, it was a doozy, it was a good one.
Certainly was. Definitely a big shake-up then in terms of championship as we head towards halfway. Be at round 4 of 10 next time out. You look at the guys that were 3rd, 4th, 5th coming in. Anderson, Griffin, and McCartan. Well, we didn't see McCartan, but Anderson and Griffin are unable to capitalise. They're finishing 12th and 13th. Cockenden finishing 10th. Sabo finishing 14th. So all 4 of them had a shocking second race. Their first race should keep them elevated, though, in that fight. Certainly very tight, and this looks like it's going to be going right down towards the end. I don't think any one of those guys has a clear advantage over the other. Once you throw that reverse grid race in, all bets go out the window.
That is indeed so, and it's such a great equalizer as well. Like, you have one race where you decided by the pace, and the second race where you decided by the race. So, you know, you have to race, you have to be able to overtake, and I think it's a very, very interesting spectacle, because you have guys who can and who will surprise, especially in race number 2. And as a result of that, you know, we get a lot of interesting racing.
We do. Hey, we got our entire Rafael Sabo up here for an interview. Sabo, good drive out there in race 1. That's your 3rd consecutive race 1 victory. Race 2, though, was a bit rough.
Yeah, at the end there, unfortunately, with the safety car, we were in a really good position, but yeah, it just went around the outside and got tapped. Can't really do much about it. The car on the inside kind of just went in a straight line, but it is what it is. It's all right.
I love that attitude. So, I guess reverse grid races, you've got that risk, don't you? You keep winning these, you know, pace races, if you will, where you start positions determined off your overall pace thanks to qualifying, and you can run away with it and all that. You put yourself at the back. You're putting yourself on that high-risk scenario. It makes it very hard to clean up both races. Round 1, you came home 2nd. Last round, coming home in 4th. I think it's doing wonders to the championship battle, isn't it? Going to keep it very close.
Yeah, it's keeping it very interesting for the viewers and the ones paying attention to the championship. I mean, we are only 3 rounds in, so we've got a long season. We've got 10 rounds,
Yeah.
so, you know, just kind of playing the long game, the first 5 rounds to kind of just do as well as you can and keep trying to get up to the board as much as you can. But that's what I've been trying to do. I've been proving that in race 1, which I'm glad for. Race 2's recent rounds have been quite tricky and for some reason just very unlucky for me. But that's all right. We'll bounce back. I'm not thinking much of it. It's a long season, so that's all.
Hey, well, we're looking forward to seeing how this one transpires over the next 7 weeks. Who are any sponsors or any people that help you get here?
Just a big thanks to the people watching and you guys for broadcasting, and the series sponsors who look after the series themselves, and the series organizers for putting it on.
Hey, thank you for joining us. Good job once again today, and we'll probably talk to you next week.
Thank you very much, guys. See you later. Good night.
Zantel Rafael Sabo coming home with a race 1 win and a tough old second race. And with that, we'll close things up here on GSRC. Thanks as always to Express Hydraulics and Griffin Excavations for their support of the series, and the BMW Race Driver Series for bringing this to our virtual screens. And the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcasts are listed here on your screen. Additional thanks also go to Juna Lund, who provides all of our music. You can see the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. And thanks to the team with me today, Joe and Ozzy. You can find out more about GSRC, including our upcoming races, at globalsimracingchannel.com, or check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Gram. Make sure to hit subscribe to us on YouTube as well, so you don't miss a moment. There's other races listed up there right now, so check them out and mark them down. But for tonight, from all of us here in the booth, thank you for joining us, and race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.